Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyofbaking.com. Today we're going to make an apple tart with the cream cheese filling, or you could call it an apple cheesecake tart. And this is what it looks like. On the bottom we have this buttery, crisp shortbread crust, then a cream cheese filling, and then on top of that slices of apple that have been coated in a cinnamon sugar, and then we're going to finish off with some sliced almonds. So a really tasty tart. So the first thing you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 230 degrees Celsius. And you will need a 9-inch, which is 23 centimeter, springform pan. Comes in 2 pieces. It's a latch here. You put your bottom plate in and snap it shut. And then I like to put my pan on a larger baking sheet because sometimes the tart as it bakes will leak a little from the apples, so it's best to have, you don't want that on the bottom of your oven. And then I'm going to butter my pan, or you could spray it with one of those nonstick sprays. So what I do is I just melt a little bit of butter, and then I'm just using a pastry brush to brush the bottom and the sides. Okay. We're going to start with our shortbread crust. I just make it in the food processor, fast, easy, and then I'm also going to make the cream cheese filling in there, so you only need one to mess up one thing. You could use your stand mixer or a hand mixer, or you could even make this by hand, but really fast and easy in the food processor. First thing you will need is 1 cup, 130 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram, I'd like to use kosher salt, and then 1/3 cup, 40 grams of confectioner sugar. You may know that as either powdered or icing sugar. And that's it for the dry ingredients. I'm just going to put that, just pulse for a few minutes, or a few seconds, just to mix everything together. If you're doing it by hand, just use a wire whisk. And then I'm going to add 1/2 cup, 113 grams of cold unsalted butter. Now I just prefer the flavor of the unsalted, plus I like to control the salt in my recipes. If you have a favorite salted butter, you could use that. I would leave out the salt then in the recipe. So you want to use cold butter and just chop it into, or cut it into large chunks. And then what I'm going to do is just pulse until it starts to, you don't want a solid ball of dough, it just starts to clump together. If you wanted to do it by hand, just work it in with your fingertips until it starts to come together. Same thing if you do it with in your stand mixer. Okay. Okay, so it's just starting to clump together. If you're using a food processor, you'll hear it kind of starts to sound different. But this is what you want, just clumps. Like I said, if you're just work it in with your fingers if you're doing it by hand. Okay, so now dump that all in there. And then I'm not even going to bother washing this. I'm going to make the cream cheese filling in there, so save yourself a wash up there. And then flour. What I'm going to do is press it about 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters up the sides. I'll do that first, and then just press it onto the bottom. So once I have it around the sides, I just use my index finger here and press down, because you might have it too thick on the sides. Go all the way around. And then just start to work it, press it into the bottom. It'll just be a very thin layer. You know, it's not a thick crust. Okay, I think I fussed enough with this. You can take the back of a spoon to smooth it out too, but that looks good. No one's going to see the crust. So now I'm going to cover this and pop it into the refrigerator, and then to chill just a little while we do the cream cheese filling and get our apples ready. So we'll be right back for that. So now we're going to do the apples and then the cream cheese filling. So for the apples, you will need 4 cups of peeled, cored, and sliced apples. So what you would need to buy is 800 grams of apples, or that's about 1 3/4 pounds. And what you want to use is a apple that has pretty firm texture and it won't lose its shape when we bake our tart off. So good choices. Granny Smith, which I have here. You could use Gala, Rome, Golden Delicious, Honeycrisp, or what I'm doing here actually, I'm not using one type, I'm using a Granny Smith, I used already sliced up a Honeycrisp and a Gala. So, because you need about 3 large apples, about this size is about what you need to buy. So to slice up your apples, you can use a peeler and peel. I'm going to show you how I do it. There's different ways, whatever way works for you, but I just take my knife, slice down through, and then I cut on either side of the core, like so, and across the bottom. And then I take my paring knife and just peel off the skin. And once you do that, just take your knife, and then we're going to slice them about 1/4 inch, which is about 1/2 centimeter. And I'll just put those in the bowl and carry on with the rest of the apple. Okay, so that's our apples. I just put them in a large bowl, kind of separate because the slices tend to stick together. And then I do taste my apples, especially the Granny Smith. This is a fall, a new crop. They're a little tart, just how I like them. So I'm going to use 1/4 cup, 50 grams of granulated white sugar. Like I said, if you taste your apples and they're not, like mine are all tart and tangy, really good. Yours are not that tart, then you can use less sugar. And then I'm adding 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Just have to have that with apples. And then I'm just going to use my hands to toss all that. Like, you want to make sure you break up all, like if they're sticking together, so all of the apples are coated with that cinnamon sugar. I really like using at least a couple different types of apples. It really, there's more complexity of flavor to your finished tart, but like I said, you can just use one, whatever you have. Okay, that's that. So I'm going to put that aside, wipe my hands, and then we'll make our filling. I just wiped out my food processor with a clean rag, and then the first thing you will need is 8 ounces, 225 grams of, I'm using a full fat cream cheese, and have that at room temperature. And I'm just going to process that until it's nice and smooth. Quick work in the food processor, but again, you could use a hand mixer, stand mixer for this. And then I'm going to add 1/4 cup, 50 grams of granulated white sugar, along with 1/2 teaspoon, that's 2 grams of pure vanilla extract. The vanilla is for flavoring, so if you want, you can leave that out. And 1 large egg, which is 50 grams, and have your egg at room temperature. And then I'm just going to process this until everything's all mixed together and it's nice and smooth. Okay, that looks pretty good. Pretty smooth. So now I'm going to just clean up, and then I'm going to get my crust from the refrigerator, and then we'll assemble and bake. Okay, so we are ready. I'm going to, you can kind of, in a food processor, you can kind of put your finger into the bottom there to hold that blade, or you could take it out first. Either way, just pour your filling in here. You have a few little lumps of cream cheese, don't worry about it, that's okay. They'll all bake off there. Then I just take, you can take the back of a spoon or an offset spatula, spread this side out. You know, I've been making this tart, I think close to 30 years, and you know, it's still a favorite. It's just the combination of the shortbread, the cream cheese, and the apple, it's just wonderful. So once you've done that, then what I do, I mean, I'm not going to get really fancy here. If you wanted to take the time, you could do concentric circles or whatever you do. I just, you know, this to me is a casual tart, although it looks good, but I just pile them on. Not too fancy here. Okay, spread them out as evenly as you can. That looks good. Let's press them down a little. So now, everyone's oven is a little different, but we're going to start with 10 minutes. And then what I'm going to do is take it out of the oven and I'm going to sprinkle on a half a cup, 50 grams of sliced almonds. I don't want to add the almonds right away because I find with all the long baking time and the high oven temperature, they tend to get a little too brown for my liking. So I'm just going to, like I said, 10 minutes, and then we'll take it out and sprinkle on our almonds. So that's been 10 minutes. So take my half cup, 50 grams. I'm using sliced. You could use slivered as well, whatever you have. Or if you don't want to use, you could leave them off, or you could probably use walnuts, pecans. So, and now we're going to put it back into the oven. We are going to lower the temperature to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 200 degrees Celsius. And then we're going to bake this somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes. You will see the crust will become nice and golden brown. And when you take a knife and insert it into the slices of apple, it will be like tender. It won't be mushy, but it'll be tender. So I'm going to say somewhere between 25, 30 minutes. So our apple tart is done. So put your baking sheet on a wire rack. As you can see, the crust is a beautiful golden brown. I did insert a knife into the apples. It's kind of soft, not mushy, but soft. And you can see the almonds have browned so nicely. So now what we're going to do is just let it cool down until it's at room temperature. And then when we come back, we will have a slice. So we're now ready to try our tart. So just take the top off. There we have it. Now you could sprinkle the, dust the top with powdered sugar now. But what I find is if it sits too long, the powdered sugar kind of melts. So usually what I do is I cut it into slices, put it on a plate, and then sprinkle it. But either way, if you were serving the whole tart, so now just take, now you can serve this warm, room temperature, or even cold. So whatever you like. Sure. Came out really easy. Okay, whoop. Still quite fragile. It's a little warm. Actually, I like it a little warm. So there we go. Put that aside. And you can just dust the top. I don't think it needs anything else. Doesn't that look pretty? You know, it is a nice looking tart. And really, it's not that much work. It looks, I mean, people say, oh, that must have taken you all day, and it doesn't. So that's a good recipe. Oh, like I said, I've been making this a long time, and almost 30 years, and I still like it just as much. You have on the bottom that buttery, crisp shortbread crust, and then that smooth and creamy filling, the apples. I really like, you know, if you can get a couple different types of apples, it really gives the apples a real nice complex flavor. And then the almonds just finish it off. It is a really, really good tasting tart. So like I said, you can serve it warm, room temperature. You can store it in the fridge cold. Sometimes what I do is I store it, like say overnight. The next day I just pop it into the microwave just to warm it up just a little. You have to try this one. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyabaking.com.